Hello, welcome to Movies I Love with yours truly, Nomfanelo. Man, it has been a while since I've last made a Movies I Love video because I believe the last one that I made was for Fast and Furious way back when. But regardless, I am back. So before I delve into the film for this video, sorry, I want to talk briefly about Riverside. So, if you're new to the channel or if you've seen any of my previous videos on my channel, I'm sure you'll recognize that I've been using Riverside. So, Riverside essentially is a platform that you could use to record content either for your podcast, interviews, webinars, and so forth. And I have used Zoom before, which is fine, but in my opinion, Riverside is better because not just the audio is great, but the video is great as well too. And plus, too, you get to um, cut. Plus, you also get to make short videos you could post on social media to promote your content. So, if Riverside interests you as a platform to use, you could sign up via the link in the description. All right, let's get into today's film, which is Lara Croft Tomb Raider. So it is a 2001 action adventure film that is based on the Tomb Raider video game series of the same name. The film is directed by Simon West, is known for directing films such as Con Air and The Expendables 2. And the film stars Angelina Jolie, Daniel Craig, and Iain Glenn. So, in terms of my thoughts, so I first saw this movie in theaters at the time. I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it to this day on repeat viewing because I find that it's a nice adventure movie and is appreciated that for me it was like the first female led adventure film that I saw because I have not I yeah, sorry, because when I first saw this movie. I did not see Indiana Jones prior to this movie, and the only recollection of a female led adventure is with the TV show Relic Hunter, which came out in the 2000s. Around this time, this movie came out. But yeah, for me, just appreciated the adventure genre more, and I just love that it's a fun movie that you could enjoy. So I am not familiar with the video games or with the lore of those games, so I cannot comment on that aspect. But for me, I just enjoyed in terms of how the world of this movie is set up. So let's get into why I love this movie. So, first and foremost, let's talk about Angelina Jolie as Lara Croft. Now, when I was doing research, I saw that when she was announced to be cast in this role, I think people were not happy with it. But then by the time the movie came out, it obviously changed their mind. And again, I'm not familiar with how the character is in the video game, but I like how in the movie, essentially, she is a tomboy. She wears a lot of black clothing all the time, sunglasses, and the braided hair while carrying like her two handguns during the action scenes. And it's fun. It's a funny moment where the butler, Hillary, tells Laura Croft, "Oh, a lady should be modest," because he tries to hand her a dress, but she's like, But then it comes full circle, like during the final sequence of the movie when she wears a dress and a hat to as she goes to visit her father's tombstone at the end. So that was an interesting moment for a character. But I like how essentially the character she has an attitude where she will not care about what other people think, and she loves to play around with people. Like there's moments where she would wink. with the guy that was the head of the Illuminati at the plane sequence one, and also to one of the people attending the auction earlier in the movie. So those are some cool character moments, and I love how Angelina Jolie that not only like this displays like her capability as an action star in regards to those scenes, but you also get to see her like in emotion displaying her emotional side as well too with this role. So I thought she was fantastic in the role. And another reason why I like this movie is because of its themes or its aspects with the father and daughter. Because clearly, like, the father plays an integral role, like, in this movie, as he was claimed to be missing in action, and Laura's still grieving, with her dad's death, especially when it came to the anniversary of his death, which leads to a whole series of events. And essentially, like, with like the mission that her father gives her via the letter that she sent, she in ways though, like, she gets to learn more about her father, like to connect with him more, particularly when she finds out from Powell that he was a part of the Illuminati, which was surprising. And when she confronts him about that in a later scene, because yeah, he pretty much admitted that he did not want her to know about that part. Eventually, I can't remember the exact context, but it was something along those lines. And when they meet up later, it was quite bittersweet because he tells her that he cannot change time because she clearly wants to bring him back. But you know how it is with these types of movies where if you try to change time, there's always a cause and effect, which gets worse essentially. And yeah, it was interesting that her real life father, John Voight, was cast as the father. I don't know if that choice was deliberate, but I guess somehow it works though, and you don't have to worry about chemistry. So there's that. I love how, of course, with adventure movies, one of the key factors is locations. And of course, this movie has locations. Not a lot, but some key locations. So obviously, it takes place in the UK, but then you also have Venice, where the Illuminati is based off, Siberia, when the group goes to Russia, and then Cambodia, and I would say like Cambodia is my favorite location because they're like not just we see like the nice scenery, but we get to see like the cultures of Cambodia. And I enjoyed that scene when Laura is meeting up with a monk and she drinks the bad tea, but is surprised to learn that it healed her injury on her arm. I like how with this movie the comedy is not over the top but more subtle, if that makes sense. Because an example is when the auction scene, when Laura sees Wilson, like he waves at her, she waves at him, but then the guy leading the auction thought that she was raising her hand to bid. And she was like, no, no, no. That was hilarious. But then luckily someone else did raise their hand to make a bidding. So I thought that scene was hilarious. And another thing too, like with the when the UPS guy notices the destruction of the manor, he's like surprised. And I thought, yeah, that scene was quite hilarious. And also too, Mr. Pims. I thought Mr. Pims is a interesting name. I'll just leave it at that. And lastly, what I love about this movie is, of course, the action scenes. There's not a whole lot of those scenes because we have like the opening sequence of her training with the machine that kind of looks like the that machine Ed something from RoboCop. But I would say my favorite one is the attack on Craft Manor with that whole sequence when the bad guys are storming into the place to steal the key. And I loved how like there was some wire work where Laura like is practicing at first, but then uses that to try to dismantle the bad guys while she's wearing her pajamas. And then we see the butler Hillary putting on his vest and slippers and using the shotgun against the bad guys. So yeah, I thought that was a great action scene. That I would say, yeah, my favorite in this movie. Now, in terms of criticisms, my main one is the villain. So Powell, so he tells Laura that he is a lawyer, but then has a thing for antiques as a hobby. But he says it's an obsession. He says that antiquities are an obsession. So yeah, clearly, like this guy is sketchy. And we see when he's introduced, he is part of the Illuminati. Now, I found it was hilarious that when he meets up with Flora later in the movie at the, I'm assuming at the Vatican, whatever they call it, like she asked him, "Oh, what seat do you sit in?" And then and then he says, "Oh, like the seat next to the head one." Even though when he's introduced, we never see him sitting because you see all the members sitting down addressing him. So he is more of a henchman villain, but then he decides to kill the head of the Illuminati to, I guess, claim the artifacts for himself, question mark. But I feel like really it was more to claim the head seat of the Vatican. That part I was not too sure because it seems like he has the same goals in mind as the Illuminati, but he just wants to do it himself. I don't know. And another criticism I have is, I mean, no surprise, the CGI was very noticeable, particularly in the later half when they're trying to get the halves, I guess, of the triangle. Yeah, that whole work was noticeable. And I want to talk about briefly the franchise of this movie. So I have seen the other Tomb Raider movies. So let's go with the sequel, The Cradle of Life. I saw that one too in theaters. I thought that one was fine when I saw it at the time. But I remember, like, I think when I saw scenes of the movie, I can't remember what was the context. I realized, like, oh, Gerard Butler was in this movie. I'm like, okay. And because I find it's interesting that when you watch these movies years later, you realize, like, oh, this person was in that movie. Like with this one, Daniel Craig was in the movie where he plays Alex, that's his name. And it's interesting because at the time I did not know who Daniel Craig was when I first saw this movie. But then watching the movie after Casino Royale came out, I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was in this movie. So I thought that was interesting. And so with Creative Life, back to Creative Life, I thought it was okay, but I just preferred the first movie. I have not rewatched it in a while, so I would need to rewatch it to see if my feelings have changed or if they're still the same. And then years later, we got the reboot Tomb Raider, which is based off the rebooted video game, I believe. And I got an advanced screening for this movie at the time, and I thought it was okay. Like it didn't wow me to be honest. Maybe because this one was more serious compared to the Angelina Jolie movies. Because I have not revisited this movie since I first saw it, so I don't know. I thought it was like okay, but yeah. And I thought that with Alicia Vikander, though, she did a good job with her performance in the movie. It was unfortunate that there was supposed to be a sequel for this movie, but that got canceled because of the rights change for the movie, I believe. But yeah, I would have loved to see Alicia Vikander do another movie for this one, but it looks like that's not going to happen. And I saw that apparently Amazon, speaking of the rights, they got the rights for the to make a movie, I believe back in January this year. And apparently that's going to connect with a TV series that's being done by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And I've seen a lot of discourse with this where people have a lot of concerns about the series. So I'm curious myself because I enjoyed Fleabag myself, and I don't know like how this one is going to be. To be honest, we'll have to wait and see. But I do hope that it's a fun adventure than being a serious take on it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one if it does happen. So that pretty much concludes this video. So yeah, you could watch the film via your local provider, and you can find links for my socials in the description, and also the link, my referral link to Riverside in the description. I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, and I will catch you on the next one.